We're gonna get started in just a second. Welcome, welcome, good evening. We're gonna get started. Hi, good evening. My name is Kiva Muller. I'm the Communications Manager here at Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority, and I would like to welcome you to the third and final installment of our public hearings for the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Action Plan Amendment number 2 and the update for the Citizen Participation Plan. Our Director Griffith, you're on the line. So I'd like to introduce you to our Executive Director, Daryl Griffith, who will bring some opening remarks on the action plan.
Good night, everyone. And Ms. Muller, if to make sure I'm saying the correct portion, and we're going straight into the citizen participation plan portion, or
yeah, I'm gonna do that, but you're just gonna do some remarks, and then I'll do the entire CPP portion.
Fantastic. Well, welcome everyone to the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority's public meeting to provide updates on the Citizens Participation Plan and the CDBG-DR Substantial Plan Amendment number 2, which is the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funds. We will conduct 2 separate presentations, beginning with the Citizens Participation Plan updates. Once that has been completed, we will open the meeting up to questions and feedback, and then move on to the Community Disaster Block Grant Disaster Recovery Action Plan Amendment number 2. Ms. Muller?
Thank you. Bear with me for a second. I just got a whole huge screen, so I'm trying not to look at that screen. Okay, so citizen participation plan and purpose. It is to inform and engage citizens on all HUD-funded programs, report progress of project and outcomes of the programs, and solicit input from the public and especially low income households. So VIA HFA administers the territory's funds for many programs that you guys are familiar with: home ownership programs, public and homeless services, for example. And most recently, VIA HFA has assumed the responsibility of administering a portion of the disaster funding that comes from the federal government. The laws governing the programs require HFA to involve the community, those of whose said programs will directly benefit. We will provide information on the proposed use of funds, and you, the public, in turn, will give your comments and feedback. So the Citizen Participation Plan for VIA HFA is a formal document and guide to how we engage the public. It should be updated every 10 years. So we're here today to provide information on the changes we've made. The last time it had been updated was 2010. So we're right on time. So in addition, when funding more than a set percentage or amount changes, or we change the people that will benefit from the use of the funds, it is called a substantial amendment, and it must follow the public participation process. If changes are just administrative in nature, such as policy clarifications, or it corrects typographical errors, or a minimal amount of funding is adjusted, HUD and the public are notified of the administrative changes about 5 days prior to the changes taking effect. So this citizen participation plan update includes details on the types of amendments and the actions that are required. So a little background on our federal programs. The territory receives funds on an annual basis for 4 programs: the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, the Emergency Solutions Grant, or ESG program, the Home Investment Partnership Program, known as HOME, and the Housing Trust Fund, HTF. These block grant programs are annually allocated in the US budget and are not dependent on disasters. So we've also included disaster funding. So when the president declares a disaster has occurred in the territory and Congress passes legislation with funding to address the disaster's impact, the government of the Virgin Islands is required to involve the public in determining how the money is to be used. VIA HFA has received CDBG disaster recovery and mitigation funds for the 2017 hurricanes. HFA has also received CDBG and ESG funds for the COVID-19 pandemic. So what does this have to do with the Citizen Participation Plan? Well, it's a formality, and these new funding programs must clearly be outlined in the plans that we have to engage the public. So what exactly are the updates in this Citizen Participation Plan? So it includes details on the public outreach process for disaster funding. Like I previously mentioned, we have to clearly outline how we're going to do public outreach for the disaster funds that we recently received. It also includes the increased use of social media as a means to engage with the public, which was not widely available when the last Citizen Participation Plan was released in 2010. And lastly, it includes a process for emergency situations, specifically public health pandemic that we're dealing with right now. So those are the 3 main changes that we have in the Citizen Participation Plan. And we welcome your input. This is why we are here today. So if you have any suggested changes on the citizen participation plan. We'll move on to the action plan substantial amendment in a few minutes. But this particular plan, if you have any comments, please state your name, or if you have any affiliation you may have. We're going to limit all oral comments to 4 minutes. You can also write your comments in the chat function, and they will be answered. We also will be documenting the questions so that we can formally answer them in the documents and have them available to you guys. So if you have any questions or concerns about this citizen participation plan, we want to hear from you on how we can best engage with you, the public. So I am going to check the chat function. We don't have any comments there. And if we have no comments on this section of the presentation, I'll just leave it stand for 2 minutes just to see if anybody else will come online, and then we will move forward. If you do have a comment, feel free to unmute yourself and state your name. Before we move forward, while we're waiting, I'll also mention that all feedback will be captured and any unaddressed comments will be addressed in writing. If you do not wish to state your comments on the live, feel free to email your comments to cdbg-dr@vihfa.gov. We've been getting tons of emails, so it works, and we are receiving your comments. Or if you feel better writing, you can mail your comments to me, Kiva Muller, or Attention Communications Manager. I'm here in St. Croix, so you'll address it to 100 Lagoon Complex, suite number 4, St. Croix, VI, zip code 00804 3912. So I'm going to give it 1 more minute, and if not, we are going to move on. Okay, seeing and hearing none. We're gonna move forward. So we have arrived to the action plan amendment number 2. We will be presenting on the proposed changes that we have. That's my timer. So joining me for updates on the CDBG-DR action plan amendments are our Chief Disaster Recovery Officer, David Martin, and our CDBG-DR Director, Antoinette Fleming. So the goals for today's public hearing. So we are here today to update you on the CDBG disaster recovery programs. We're also here to announce the new allocation for infrastructure unmet needs. And we are finally here to gather feedback from you on what is being proposed. I want to spend a few extra seconds here, similar to what I mentioned earlier with the citizen participation plan. We want to hear yay, the proposed use of funds are on the right track, or nay, we need to revisit some of the critical areas, or we just want you to provide your honest feedback on the intended use of funds. Your commentary and feedback will be addressed here on the live and formally sent off to HUD. It is really a temperature check from the public to see how we are handling the disaster funding. And I will hand it over to our CDBG-DR Director, Antoinette Fleming, and she will give you more details on the disaster recovery process. Antoinette?
All right, thank you, Kiva. Good evening, everyone. Managing the disaster recovery program and the funding that's surrounding with it is an ongoing recovery process. Funding will be adjusted as the needs are identified by the public or as needs are identified by the citizens or by what's going on in our community. The first action plan, which was for the first allocation you may have heard about, that was a $242 million, was presented to the public and approved by HUD. This was back in July of 2018. With tranche two, the action plan was amended. We came before the public in a different process. At that time, we were not virtual, we were in person, and we gave you some feedback on what were the proposed changes at that time. And that was approved back on March 1st, 2019. Amendment number two, which is we are before you today, this is an additional $53 million award that was given to the territory for unmet needs and infrastructure. The amendment also brings on some changes in the allocation priorities and is in compliance with the conditions of the federal requirement of the federal grant. So while I'm here today, I'm also going to give you some quick updates on what we have been doing. Before I get into the updates, however, I want to explain the terminology for what you're seeing on the slide. Subrecipients are Government of the Virgin Islands, departments, agencies, and or nonprofit entities that receive funds from via HFA to carry out a specific DR project. We begin with the capacity assessment and we review your internal controls, your policies and procedures for managing the proposed federal funds you're about to receive. So once the capacity assessment is completed, we develop what we call a subrecipient agreement. And from that, we can apply, we look at your CDBG-DR application. That's where we bring on a specific DR project. After HFA has reviewed and approved the application for those projects, HFA develop a project agreement. This is executed, and once this is executed, you are issued a notice to proceed and work can now begin on your project. Giving you some more updates on what we've been doing thus far. The list of projects that I'm about to talk about can be found in the executive summary on page 9 and page 17. And later on in the presentation, Kiva will show you where you can find the executive summary and the action plan amendment that we're talking about on our website. So examples of the projects that we're looking at right now under infrastructure is matched. By this amendment, amendment number 2, we're seeking the public's input on moving a total of $430 million into the infrastructure program. Repair and resilience program, we're working with the Department of Public Works to do 2 specific road projects. Dunu Bypass on St. Thomas, it's a 2-mile stretch of land, road actually, and the Northside Highway Road on St. Croix is a 6.5-mile highway on St. Croix. Under the DR program, we will be doing some design work to make the repairs to those 2 roads. And under the the CDBG mitigation project, this is where we will actually do the construction for those road projects. UVI is also working on a multi-purpose complex that would also double as a shelter during, hurricane time. So in the event we have another Category 5 hurricane, and we require the need to shelter in a location in and not our home, UVI would build a multi-purpose complex and it would double as a shelter during that time. Monies from this amendment is also going to assist Randolph-Holly project. We are providing $95 million monies, $95 million to WAPA so that they can complete and provide 4 generators for the Randolph-Holly power plant. We're also working with the Department of Tourism so they can do a marketing campaign. Although where the whole world is involved in COVID-19, it is our hope that once this pandemic has passed and we are able to get back into being a tourist destination environment, we can advertise to the public that we are open and our shores are pristine and pretty as they once were before. Housing Authority, we have several projects working with our sister agency, Walter I.M. Hodge, Williams Delight on St. Croix, a Dunu redevelopment project on St. Thomas, and a project that's not part of Housing Authority, but is currently going on that we need to tell you about is the Megas Bay Junction project on St. Thomas. Also want to make mention to VI Port Authority, the Shaw Tamalia dredging project. We are currently working with Port Authority to dredge a harbor on St. Thomas to allow the Quantum-sized cruise ships to come into our ports. So this is just a snapshot of the different projects we're working on and all the different sub-recipients we are engaged with. Moving on to the next slide. On this slide, you will see the amount of CDBG funding provided to the territory is almost $2 billion. The funds have been announced in separate allocations. We call them tranches. Now, each tranche must be separately approved by HUD before the dollars are available and spent in the territory. Tranches 1 and 2 have already been approved, as I mentioned before. Tranche 2A is what we are coming before you today to talk about the new funding that's available to us. A total of $53 million was just announced, and this amendment defines how the funds will be spent. Once the amendment is approved, HUD will issue the territory a grant agreement, and the funds will be available for draw. In yellow, you see identified Tranche 3, the mitigation tranche, has a separate action plan and is underway as well, but is not part of today's discussion. So in this chart before you, the allocation awarded to the territory is through tranches, as I mentioned. We have to get used to new words and new meanings. So tranches was one of them as we got to use CDBG-DR funds. The initial disaster recovery fund allocated to the territory after 2017 hurricane only makes up 13% of the CDBG-DR funds. So what we got in tranche 1 and 2 is only like 13%. The electrical grid and the mitigation funds, they make up a separate allocation. And by the graph above, they make up 40% of the funding and 3% of the funding. Remember that what you're seeing does not represent all the funding awarded to the territory from the 2017 hurricanes. This is only CDBG-DR disaster recovery mitigation amounts. FEMA funding, which is now close to $5 billion, is in addition to these funds. FEMA and the Office of Disaster Recovery, we're known as ODR, administers the FEMA funding. By this proposed budget amendment that we're also working with, we want to really highlight that housing has increased. Initially, housing was only 2% of our budget. By this amendment, we're increasing housing to 33% of the budget. At this time, I will turn the mic over to Mr. David Martin.
Thank you, Ms. Fleming, and good evening, everyone. So let's talk unmet need. Funding that is provided after a disaster event is never enough to cover all the damages. When HUD uses the term unmet need, it is the difference between the amount of damage and the amount of funding available. For instance, if a project has a, a damage assessment of $4 million and FEMA and insurance will cover $2 million, that leaves an unmet need of $2 million. In addition to the two disaster recovery tranches for $242 million and $779 million, and the $774 million awarded for mitigation, HUD announced an additional $53 million that is to be used for unmet needs for infrastructure projects and repairs. This new $53 million, which we are calling Tranche 2A, can be used for roads, public facilities, waste management, and water and sewer projects. Because it is for infrastructure unmet needs and not housing or economic revitalization, the funds are being added to the non-federal share or match program. Thank you. These are some projects, or these are some of the eligible projects under the infrastructure program. It's important to note that the power generation projects have specific requirements in addition to separate funding allocation. The future power generation projects will be funded through CDBG-DR and CDBG mitigation, and once the electric grid tranche is released. HFA and WAPA will work closely with HUD to ensure the projects awarded meet all the specific criteria for power generation projects. Housing is one of our highest priorities for recovery. Funding for the housing sector has significantly increased to allow more clients to be served under the homeowner program. The funding has increased from 60 million to 150.2 million. Due to the high demand for home ownership, this program has increased from 50 million to 70 million. The rental program remains the same at 25 million. And due to the unmet needs in affordable housing, the public and affordable housing program funding has increased from 72 million to 81.5 million. Now, a few words on public services and facilities. These activities were previously included in the housing program in both the action plan and Amendment 1. This amendment creates a separate sector dedicated to public services and public facilities. Public facilities are defined as a publicly owned facility or buildings owned by nonprofits or agencies that are open to the public or serve persons with special needs. Examples of publicly owned facilities are libraries, recreational facilities, parks, or playgrounds. Examples of buildings owned by nonprofits or agencies are homeless or domestic violence shelters, nursing or group homes, or health clinics. Public services are activities undertaken to provide employment training, child care, health services, substance abuse treatment, and counseling, educational programs, fair housing counseling, services for senior citizens, and others. Emergency shelters are also a priority. And this is so that the residents have a place to safely ride out disaster events. Homes for the aged are a priority, providing a safe environment definitely for our elders. Facilities where clients can access critical public services such as food banks, homeless services, youth programs, and senior service centers. Senior services are eligible under the Public Facility and Service Program. And here's a breakdown of the programs and their funding. You can see that the infrastructure funding exceeds 570 million. This includes the non-federal share program with approximately 5 billion in FEMA funding for the work being done. The VI share for many of the projects is 10% of the total budget. And the non-federal share is not just for infrastructure projects. It includes some housing projects as well as the STEP program. 10% of 5 billion is 500 million. So Kiva, can you take over now?
So I was talking, am I struggling to get this off of mute? So here I am. Thank you, Mr. Martin. So CDBG-DR and mitigation projects. Over the past few months, VIA HFA has invited you to participate in the mitigation action plan process. Mitigation funding has different criteria than DR, but this funding has been allocated to all 2017 grantees. As we said earlier, CDBG-DR must have a direct tie to the storms, but for mitigation, projects must have components that prevent future losses or mitigate against impacts of future storms, assisting the territory in becoming more resilient. Some projects contain components of both disaster recovery with a tie to the storm and mitigation, preventing losses in future disaster events. So projects also address what FEMA calls their community lifelines, and these are the critical service areas. And they are what you're seeing on the screen now. It's safety and security, food, water, and shelter, health and medical, energy, communications, transportation, and hazardous materials. So some examples of potential MIT projects could possibly be housing redevelopments, roads under infrastructure, maybe addressing the landfills in both districts. But right now, the mitigation action plan is currently being drafted. So once that is complete, you will see me again, and we will come back to the public and let you know what those projects that have been outlined in the action plan, and you will be able to provide commentary on those. So we have some good news. We have an updated expenditure deadline. So our new expenditure deadline is 2025. Originally, when the grant agreement was signed, the action plan was signed. Am I saying this correctly? It was done in 2018, and it gives us 6 years to spend those funds, which will give us a deadline of 2024. But given the unprecedented pandemic that we are currently facing and the restrictions that are in place, HUD has provided a year extension on the deadline for spending all CDBG-DR funds to all of its grantees. And HUD has also given its grantees an opportunity to request one additional year beyond what they already extended it to. So therefore, VIHFA will be submitting a request for the additional year, which will bring us to 2026. Great news for us. So we want to hear from you. That's why we are here today. You are welcome to state your name and any affiliation, and we will limit you to 4 minutes for your comments. Commenters will be heard on a first come, first served basis. And if you would prefer to submit a written comment, you could do so by typing in the chat room. And a friendly reminder that the comment period is open up until October 3rd. So that is it Saturday or Sunday? I need to double check that. It's the end of this week. And you can also submit your comments or questions to our CDBG-DR at vihfa.gov email, or you can mail them to me at 100 Lagoon Complex, Suite number 4, St. Croix, VI. So at this moment, we will await questions and or commentary from our guests. Let's check the chat room. So while we're waiting on comments, I will take you guys to our website where you can find the action plan amendment number 2 and the citizen participation plan. Let me share that screen. So here is our CDBG-DR website. It is cdbg-dr.vihfa.gov. And on the main page, on the right-hand side, can everyone see this? I'm sure I'm sharing the right screen.
Yes, Kiva, I'm seeing your screen.
Okay. Thank you. So you can click Learn More for Action Plan Amendment number 2. It'll take you to the Action Plan page. And if you scroll down, the draft for the substantial amendment number 2 is here. The full plan and the summary are here in both English and Spanish. You can also take a look at the current plan and the initial action plan as well. But this is the one that we're focusing on tonight, the draft substantial amendment number 2. And to take a look at the citizen participation plan, you go to the upper right-hand corner, citizen participation here. You can read the plan. This one will take you to the action plan page that we were already on, or the citizen participation plan down here. Draft plans are available full length and summary versions in both English and Spanish. And a friendly reminder that the comment period ends on October 3rd. Feel free to browse the website as well. What am I missing? Am I missing anything? So I showed you the action plan amendment number 2 and the citizen participation plan. And I also want to encourage you guys to submit your comments via email at cdbg-dr@vihfa.gov. This week, we have been getting a lot of your emails. We're reading them, we're sorting through them. We plan to answer you guys. I appreciate all of your feedback. I haven't gotten anything in the mail, so I think that's a social distancing measure maybe, or email just works faster and better. But I want to thank you guys for participating. This is the third and final public hearing. We have done 2 on Zoom before, and we've been on the radio station. You have up until October 3rd to submit your comments, and then we will draft them up and send them off to HUD. So seeing or hearing no comments on the live on Facebook and neither any on here. And if anyone is on the live and needed a Spanish translation, we aired that live earlier today at 5 p.m. You can find the video for that on our Facebook page. And in a few days, it'll be, well, not a few days, it'll be uploaded to our website shortly. So once again, I'd like to thank you for your participation today and all month long as you participated in our public comment period from September 3rd to October 3rd. We have a few more days left, so feel free to send your comments in. I'll reiterate again the website, cdbg-dr@vihfa.gov, or you can mail them to me, Kiva Muller at 100 Lagoon Complex, Suite 4, St. Croix, zip code 00804. Pass this information along to your friends, neighbors, colleagues. And I'm going to hand it over to our Director Griffith to close out.
I just want to tell everyone thank you for listening to this public comment. It's our intent to be able to share this information with you so that you can help direct how the funds are being spent. So that you, the public, the citizens of the territory are instrumental in how we use these CDBG-DR funds, these community development block grant disaster recovery funds, to do exactly that, as the name implies, for disaster recovery. So I ask that you send us emails. You can call VIHFA 772-4432 in St. Croix, 777-4432 in St. Thomas. But most importantly, send us an email or drop us a letter at VIHFA, Attention Communications Manager, 100 Lagoon Complex, Suite 4, St. Croix, VI 00804, so that you can help steer the recovery. So I thank you for your attention today, and we will keep making sure that you stay informed with what's happening with the disaster recovery funds and everything else that's happening at the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority. Thank you and have a great day. Good night.
Good night.